your kids, as we wrap up school year and move on into, now you've got some that maybe are moving into their senior year or maybe indeed thinking of college and moving on. What about real young kids? Everybody, your kids have aspirations. When they're little, maybe they want to be, you don't hear I want to be president anymore, but that's a thankless job. But, we always tell them you can grow up, be whatever you want to be. Is that true? And what if they have ideas of what they want to be that they're totally not what you think they ought to be? And sometimes parents can live their own life through their kids. There's a rough one. Dr. John Braccio is going to explore all of this because you have to support your child's choices of what they want to be while still guiding them. That's another tough parenting job. Dr. John Braccio, man, it's good to see you again. Regional Psychological Services, good morning.
Well, Mike, always good talking to you, my friend. And, it's critical that parents really do whatever they can to really allow their children to find success in life. And even with the best intentions, parents run the risk of really pushing their children to achieve things they feel are critical, but the kids don't really think they're critical. I believe it's safe to say that we've all talked to parents and would look back at how they raised their children and wish they had done it differently. Now, you can't get a redo in life, but on the other hand, you can try to advise and help other people along the way that they don't make the same mistakes that you have had. Now, and I think that, it is important, as you mentioned, we're all different. And it's important to know that really children come through us, not to us. And what I mean by this, the role of parent is you teach morality and you help develop their particular skills and interests, okay? But they may be different from us, and we have to accept that. And when children are pushed to achieve and behave the way their parents determine, and this can be pretty hard on kids, particularly when they have no interest in what the parents do, or little interest. This can cause for them anxiety, depression, substance abuse, low self-esteem, parent-child alienation, and we've talked about that before, delinquency, difficulties maintaining relationships, and unfortunately, the child can end up either submissive or very rebellious to the parent if they're pushed too hard. My point here is really not to say that parents don't need to give direction and encourage children, because they really do. No, but the main thing is that parents have to allow their children to find their success. For an example, if your parent, let's say a parent's a mathematician, and they think everybody ought to be a mathematician, including their children. Okay, well, the child has no interest in mathematics. So, the child might want to be a teacher, might want to be something else. But then the parent keeps pushing this. And the thing is, if the child does become a mathematician, they may even be a good one, but they're really not happy and they're doing it. It's really not gonna work out. And they're gonna have problems as their life goes on, and that's really, really unfortunate. So, and another thing too, and you mentioned this, it's amazing how many parents really live their lives to their children. They want to. I mean, they want their kids to do either what they didn't do or do exactly what they did, and this is really not good at all. And really good advice for parenting is to really try to be positive with your kids and push them in ways that can, helps them, not overwhelm them. You don't want them to feel like failures, and because they haven't met the standard that you've set for them. That's really not what you really want to do. Parents really, if they really want to be successful at parenting, you want to be supportive of your children. Okay, you really want to be encouraging, them, focus on the process of activity rather than just the end result. You want to make sure that they're working hard to do things and work at them rather than always getting everything done right. And it's also important they realize that really part of success is failure. You learn along the way. That's part of life. And you focus on the child, be emotionally, focusing on within and not be externally seeking satisfaction. Because if your satisfaction is determined by what others think of you and not what you think of yourself, that can be very negative. So parents really do have to work on that. If their kids don't have that, you want to have the open communication, willingness to accept different views, and never forget that each of you are individual people. You're not the same person. And this can emotionally allow you really to, in a good way, get some distance from simply wanting the children to be succeeding and really in there with what they want to do. Another thing that interests me is with parents, that you can have a successful child, both academically and in sports, as for two examples, and you can be unhappy if you feel they're not doing what they could be. They might be very happy. I think that we ought to be happy if the kids are happy, okay? And I think for parents, but a lot of times parents have a problem with this. And I think, you could just take as an example, you could take a plumber and you could take a attorney, just as examples. Okay. And they could be both very successful, successful in life. But the parents would not be happy because they don't have the biggest plumbing company in the country, or they're not the highest paid attorney. And so I think the important thing for parents to do is, how happy are the kids? What do they want to do? What are their dreams? What are their goals? And I think if parents can sit back and encourage their kids, help them find what, floats their boat, so to speak, that this can be very successful lives for the children and for them as parents. So I guess that's really kind of the key theme for today is really the parents really want to allow their children to find their success, and they want to be supportive and not pushing them and not reliving their lives or wanting them to do things they didn't do just because they feel that's what the kid ought to do. And no, that's what leads to a lot of frustration and potential breakdowns with children and their parents later in life. And we really don't want to do that. We want to unleash the kids' potential, help them, work with them, and enjoy their lives as part of the family, not as the domineering, controlling, do as I say kind of parent. Unfortunately, there are a lot of well-meaning, but there are a lot of parents that are that way too many.
Yeah. Parenting is tough in a lot of ways, and each phase of parenting, you've got the baby who do everything, relies on you, and you don't get much sleep, and you get the toddler phase, but that's when real learning and teaching and guiding can really start kicking in nice and early, real early.
Yes.
And then,
no doubt.
But then after that, you start to get to be a little more hands off, don't you? I mean, you kind of want to let them sort of find their way without getting hurt or making too big a mistake, and you start to. I mean, you get into the years where they're starting to discern, who am I? What am I about? What do I do? Those are exciting times. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get them at baseball and soccer and ballet and swim class and all of that, when really maybe we start backing off earlier than we think we should.
I think that's true, Mike. I think, we want guardrails. We want to be teaching right and wrong, the morality. But we don't want to be there just hovering over them and do this and do that. And if you don't do this, you can't be happy. Everything goes this way, where the parents trying to orchestrate everything. No, you want to set up, find what the kids are really interested in. You want to encourage them. You want to help them develop the skills that they have and help them develop things that are going to make their life successful and happy. But it isn't that we're the ones who determine it. That's why I use the example of the mathematician, okay? I mean, whatever it might be, that I do this, it works well, it pays well, I enjoy it, and you want to enjoy it, and you want to do it. Or in terms of being the athlete, I want you to be the best baseball player in the history of baseball. Now, that people will forget who Babe Ruth even was, okay? Maybe a lot of kids have already. But again, the main thing is you want your children to find who they are, develop their skills, be happy, be successful, not end up estranged from you, angry, low self-esteem, substance abuse. And a lot of kids feel they never can get their parents' approval. And then they run the risk in relationships of always living that out, always seeking the approval of others. And, you can't live a life based on what others think of you. You want that maybe to be part of the mix, but ultimately, your happiness and satisfaction comes from this inside of you. And children that have been raised with guardrails, okay, to make sure that they're, not going off and being delinquents and doing inappropriate things and not trying to do well. No, but kids like that are not going to be, if they don't have these things and they're pushed in one way, they're not going to be happy. But if they have this opportunity to grow and find their own way and be successful, that's really what makes a happy and successful person, Mike. And that's what we want our kids to be, isn't that true?
Exactly. Yeah. Dr. John Braccio. Yeah. Dr. John Braccio, our good pal over to Regional Psychological Services. I'm still a disappointment. No, I'm just kidding. Mom and Dad are always proud. They're always proud. Hey, Doc, it's always a pleasure, buddy. We'll talk again next week.
Sounds good. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye-bye. 1320 WILS. Right back in a minute.